Hi everyone, Gemma from GCC Artworks. As promised, I'm here to do my first video with you guys this week. Obviously, we've got to the end of week 1 in lockdown. I hope you've all stayed sane. If anything like me, it's been a massive shock to the system in that we've had to slow down, but that's actually also been quite nice. And it's been nice to bum around in jogging bottoms and t-shirts all week, but I will be honest, it was nice to actually put some makeup on today. Didn't want to do my videos without that. I haven't actually done any pouring at home with the kids yet. There's been various other things we've been doing, and it's also been a bit difficult to find the space, not only to do it, but to obviously then leave it to sit. So I have actually come into the shop today. Got a better setup here, obviously, and all my materials, but I'm going to try and do a number of videos today of a number of different techniques, and then I'll be releasing them over the coming weeks, obviously depending on how long we're obviously going to be stuck home. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you managed to get your supplies. At the very least, as I say, all you need is your PVA glue, water and some acrylic paint. So you don't need the fancy mediums and things if you can't get hold of them. So, and just enjoy the process of it. If your work doesn't turn out exactly like mine does, I'm sure you'll still be enjoying the mess of it, the getting involved, the something different, and yeah, trying to bring some fun to these strange times. Enjoy. Any questions, obviously ping me a message and I'll be around to answer as many as I can. But yeah, just have some fun with it. Switch angles here. First part we're going to go over is mixing up your pouring medium. This bit is so important just because if you don't get it right, then whatever you do after is just not going to go well. I mentioned in my prep video about what to buy to be able to do acrylic pouring. I did say about you can get hold of Liquitex if you're doing it sort of more professionally. Liquitex is obviously a proper art product that you mix with the PVA glue and water just to help get that nice consistency and hold the colours. Don't have to use this though, and if you're doing it at home with kids, if you haven't managed to get hold of this, and it is quite pricey, you can, as I said before, just do it with PVA and water. But I'm going to show you the recipe for both options so you can obviously work with what you've got at home. If you are mixing your pouring medium up with Liquitex, this is the ratio you want. So it's 1 part Liquitex to 2 part PVA and then 2 part water. Ideally, you want distilled water, so water that's been boiled and cooled down. I've never actually done it with normal water, so I'm not sure of the implications of that if you do, but we do as we're told. So yeah, distilled water, obviously no impurities, probably just helps it all mix better. So then what you want to do is make sure you mix really well. Cannot stress about how well you need to mix this so it's all nice and smooth, no lumps. Obviously just use any plastic cups, containers, yogurt pots, jugs. You can rinse out this mix afterwards. It will sort of like all dilute down if you need to wash up. I would say when you put this bit in, the Liquitex with the PVA, you get a bit of a shock in that it seems to really thicken it. I don't know what the reaction is there, but it seems to thicken the PVA first. So I'd mix these 2 bits first to get them nice and smooth, and then add your water and mix. It's worth, as I mentioned, investing in some condiment bottles, or if you've got something around that you can use. Once you've mixed it up in a jug, then put it into a bottle and it's good to go. So you can make up quite big batches. Don't mix it up in the bottle. I've had someone before just pour everything into one bottle, try and shake it up in the hope that would work, and it doesn't. It just doesn't get it smooth enough. If you're doing the other version, so if you're doing it with the kiddies or you haven't got Liquitex, your recipe is 6 parts PVA to 4 parts water. So roughly 60 to 40% ratio. And again, just mix. No lumps at all. You want it nice and smooth. And the consistency you're after is kind of like single cream. So flows nicely off the stick in one continuous flow, but coats it nicely as well. So that's what you're after. This is the bit usually in the workshop that it's easier to show because I can go around and have a feel. You really do need to get a feel for it, but if you think of single cream, you should be on the right track and it should be enough for us to get playing with. So another adjustment to my camera angle. Just to show you now then, your next step is to prep your surface area, so your workspace. So I would suggest putting down some sort of plastic sheeting, either bin bags or shower curtain, that sort of thing. Likewise, if you did manage to get hold of one of these racks, they are ideal so that the paint can obviously sort of pour off. If you haven't been able to, then just use anything else just to sort of prop up your tiles so that they're raised off the surface and the paint can pour over. Also, I've got all my stuff around me, so my stirring sticks, gloves. You don't have to wear gloves, you can get messy and sort of wash it off afterwards, but if you do have some, then get those on now. And yeah, away we go. So to start off with, we're obviously going to need to mix up our colours. So I suggested getting a minimum of 3 different colours for this, and then also make sure one of them was white. Always a good idea to have black as well if you can, because it adds a nice contrast. I'm a bit lazy. I've got my black and white mixed up already, but I am going to go through with you how to mix up your other colours. So take your acrylic, and you're going to want roughly sort of 20% paint to 80% pouring medium. So about that much, if you can see in there. And then you're going to go in with your pouring medium. Leave yourself a little gap at the top, just in case you do need to add more water. There are so many variables with this, so depending on the type of paint you're using, the brand, even sometimes the same colours, different colours under the same brand act differently when we're mixing them. So you really do need to sort of do it per colour, really, to get a feel for how it should look. So I'd suggest pouring in a good dose of the medium, but leaving yourself a little gap in case you do need to dilute it down a bit more with some water. And as before, mix, 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 mix. Squeeze in against the side of your cups just to get any lumps out. So yeah, this one definitely needs a touch more water. Lovely flow to it, that's what the pouring medium will do. It avoids dripping, it just helps the paint to flow nicely. But once you've got it nice and smooth, that's when you can go in and just add some more water. And mix again. It's quite relaxing just doing this, to be honest with you. There we go, so that's the consistency you're after. So there's a bit of resistance there. The stick kind of will hold up if you stand it in the paint, but it's just got a really nice consistent flow and nice and liquid. So you can go ahead and do that with all your colours of choice. As I say, you can have as many as you like. I'd say a minimum of 3, but you can do this with up to about 20 different colours if you like. Obviously keep you busy for a while. So not that much paint. You can see I put markers in my workshops for how much paint you need, so it really isn't much at all. And get mixing.
So for anyone that's bought any metallic paints, you will see as you're mixing them that they behave slightly differently. So they're a bit of a pain, to be honest. They seem to be thicker and they seem to not want to mix up, and they can go a bit lumpy. And you'll also see that metallic vein goes through them, which makes you think they're not mixed in, but they usually are. You can get them to go, it just might take a little bit more work. So once you're happy that you've got all of your colours mixed, and as I said before, it's worth doing these in big batches in the condiment bottles, just to avoid having to do this every time you want to do a new technique. Okay, so I've got my colours, and yeah, let's get pouring. So the first technique I'm going to show you is probably the first basic acrylic pour technique, and that's called a flip cup. So what you're going to want is your empty shot cup or whatever container you've got. About this size is perfect for this size tile. So if you've managed to get hold of some of these, that's how much paint you're going to need roughly to sort of cover each one. So rest your cup down. If you've got the white, you want to put a bit of white in first. And the reason for that is because with acrylic pouring, you're basically layering up colours, and it's how opaque the colour is depending on, it dictates whether it's a heavy paint or a lighter paint, and whether it's going to sink down through those layers or sit on the top. And it's all that play off of the different opacities which helps to create the really nice effect. White is probably the most opaque colour, which means it's very heavy. So if we put it on the bottom of our cup, when we flip it up, it's going to sink down through all the other colours, and that's going to help create some lovely patterns and cells and things. So a bit of white on the bottom, and then you're going to want to go in and layer up with a round of your colours. Any particular order you like. Drizzle them in, pour them straight into the middle, up to you. And as I said, if you've got a bit of black, it can be nice to add a little bit in just for some contrast. Once you get about halfway, that's when you're going to want to go in and add some of your silicone oil if you've managed to get hold of it. If you haven't, then some neat isopropyl alcohol will work. Likewise, people have tried sort of hair oils and serums and things, and they work, or WD-40 as well. So if you have got the silicone oil or sewing machine oil, a few drops, and then go in again with another round of colours. Until you get to the top. And last bit of black. Too much black will make it go moody, so unless you're after moody, I'd always put just a little bit in. Once you get to the top, you want to do another 2 drops of silicone, and then you're going to want to cut that in. So you don't want to get mixing, because if you start mixing at this point, you'll find that your colours go too marbly and too mixed up already. So you just want to, you can see where the silicone oil sits on top, just cut it down, across, and out. Then the fun. So holding your tile, you want to place it on top of your cup of paints, flip it over, obviously holding it nice and tight, and back down. Little tap for luck. Give it a couple of seconds just for that white to sink down through the other layers and do its magic. And then pull her off. So you want to really make sure you get all of that lovely paint out of the cup. And even the cups look pretty. So give it a second just to set, and you'll see where some of these lovely patterns start springing up. So these are what we call cells. I'll hold them a bit closer for you. And that's rings of colour. So as I said before, some of those that are heavier will sink down, and the other colours will come around and create these sort of rings. Now it's obviously going to need a little bit of help to cover the tile. So you just want to slowly and steady tilt it over to one edge. And then use your finger just to tease it over the sides, just so you get a nice coverage. If you are doing this with children, it's worth having a slightly bigger cup because they can get a bit excited and tend to tilt all the paint over one edge and then not have enough to cover their tile. But if you're an adult, just do it nice and steady, no rush. And so you can sort of drag the paint over just to help it get going. Now, if you've used Liquitex in your pouring medium, you'll find that you'll probably have even more cells. They'll be really distinct and they'll really hold their shape well. So as I say, if you want to be a sort of professional acrylic pour artist, then it's worth investing in some Liquitex. But even with just the PVA glue, you'll still see the effects are really pretty. So teasing it over. Nice and relaxing. Sometimes it gets a bit stuck. It's as though the tile's a bit grippy, so just spread it out and then that generally gets the tile a bit wetter so it can move better. And there you have it. So once all your sides are covered, you can set it back down, and there's one more step just to help create some of those cells. So having put the silicone in there, that will be currently sitting underneath the layers of paint. It'll be trapped in there, and likewise where we've been mixing, there'll be lots of bubbles and things trapped in the paint. So a way to release those and to warm that silicone up so that it rises up to the top and creates more cells is with a heat gun. So I've got this bad boy, stolen from the husband. But likewise you can use just a little kitchen torch or something like that. You can use a hairdryer. It's generally not that effective because it tends to blow the paint around before the heat can actually work and do its thing. Heat gun's the best, or the little kitchen torch. Well, you don't even have to do this step. It'll blast over like that, not too long, or you'll find that you start to set the acrylic paint. It turns a bit plasticky and it will start to smell, so just a little blast. And then you should see that there's even more cells have sprung up. And that's your first technique. Acrylic pour, flip cup technique, done. So for your next technique, we're going to do the swipe technique. This one tends to be done if you've done an acrylic pour like the first one, the flip cup, and you don't like it. You can do this to save it and make it pretty. Also, if you're building up some sort of composition and you want this effect, so if anyone's seen my flower canvases, I use the swipe technique on the bottom just to give the image of sort of lines, and then I do some flowers on the top. But yeah, it's a really good fun one to do. We don't use our flip cup for this one. We're going to put the paint down directly onto the tile. So you can do that in any which way you want. I tend to do it just in lines. So you want to leave a gap at the top where we're going to put some white to then swipe with. And don't worry about going over the edges. You don't want to waste your paint. We're going to tilt this side to side to cover those edges before we swipe. So just get some paint down there. The edges. Like so. You can bring a little bit of black in, again, adds a nice contrast. Wouldn't worry about bringing white in because we're going to swipe with the white, and if you swipe white over white, it won't really do anything. So just a little bit of black. And then tilt side to side just to get good coverage. And once you've done your swipe, you're not really going to want to be tilting and moving it around because you'll lose the effect. So any tilting can be done now. Don't worry about little gaps. We're going to swipe and that'll fill all those gaps in. just like so. Looks pretty already. Then, when it comes to swiping, you can use anything that's got kind of a straight edge to it. So people tend to use squeegees, bits of cardboard, things like that. I use, because it's readily available, but I use kitchen roll, and I also use this because it's nice and soft. So there's a tendency with the swipe technique to scrape paint off if you've got quite a rigid thing you're using, but with kitchen roll you can't do that. So tear it in half, so you've got a section like so. And what we're going to do, we're going to put the white at the top, rest our kitchen roll on it, just resting it, and then skimming the white over the rest of our paint. You don't want to scrape your paint off because you'll just have a tile and it'll just look a bit naff. The reason we're using the white is, as I said before, it's the heavy paint. So when it's skimmed over these other ones, it's going to sink down and create a beautiful lacing effect. So do hold the kitchen roll quite taut and at about a 45-degree angle. And the trick is to just go with it with this one. You can't kind of dilly-dally because you'll just start mopping up all the paint and it will go wrong. So put a splodge of white along the top. And then you don't have to give it a zhuzh. I tend to give it a little bit of a waterfully look. And off. Don't lift your kitchen roll up and over your swipe because it'll start dripping in places you don't want it to drip. So just put it to one side. This one can be a bit of a slow burner. So depending on what colours you're using, sometimes you'll have cells spring up straight away. You'll see that the black tends to react quite well and bring some nice cells. Likewise, you'll find that this one will change a lot. So as it sits there, you'll notice more and more cells starting to spring up, and you'll come back and look at it again in a few minutes and it will look completely different. But as before, if you have got a heat gun, you can give it a little bit of a blast. Doesn't tend to do too much with this because we didn't put any silicone oil in, but if there's any bubbles trapped in the paint, it can help those pop and just help the effect come up. So you can start tilting this around if you're finding you wanted to lose a little bit of white from the top. Just lift it really steadily and let it slowly stretch out. Likewise, you can start tipping it over one edge, but do be conscious that the more you move this, the more likely you are to lose your cells. They'll just break up. And that's that. Swipe technique. So next technique is the tree ring pour. So you'll see why this is given that name, because it looks like if you slice a tree and you see all the rings, it's that sort of effect. We're going to use our cup for this one. If you've got any residue, just pour it all out and a little wipe, just to get rid of any silicone we might have in there from previous pours. We don't want cells with this effect. It will break up the lovely lines and linear look that we're going for, so no silicone if we can help it. You are going to pour up again, as with the first technique, in layers. No need to start with white because, as I say, we don't want cells, so just go in and layer up. One thing I would suggest is that you try and do light, dark, so you get some good definition between your lines, or just put colours next to each other that seem to contrast. And keep going till you get to the top. Bit of black. I'll do one more bit of pink. So give that a second just for the colours to start sinking. You'll see the white start sinking down. Then what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that there is a dot in the middle of our tile, and we're going to pour onto that dot consistently, so keep it pouring, don't let it drip, and you're just going to give a tiny little shuffle of your hand. You don't have to draw the circles with this one, they will just start to create themselves, so you just got to be a bit patient. Probably will hold your breath, but do keep the paint pouring. Just like so. Kind of hypnotic. And you'll see that the rings just start to create themselves and stretch out. This one works beautiful if you're using purples and blacks. It starts to look like a galaxy. Keep going right to the end. When you have used all your paint, let it do its last drip in the middle and then away. As with them all, we've poured a circle onto a square, so we're going to have to get tilting. And we want to really stretch out those lovely lines as well, so let it do its thing for a minute. And down to one end. And tease it over. You're obviously going to lose the circle shape, but you can create an interesting composition still with that linear look. Also really, if you're using earthy tones, sort of browns and golds, they can look like sliced rock, like agate. And you'll see, as much as we didn't use silicone, that tiniest residue left in the cup, it still creates some cells. That looks pretty. So play with the composition, bring it back on itself if you're finding you want it a bit more sort of central. And there you go. I'm not going to blast this one because I don't want to create any cells because they will ruin the look of it. I'm happy with what it's done itself. So that's it done, your tree ring pour. Okay, so today then we're going to do another technique, and we're going to do the puddle pour technique. So for this one, you're going to be pouring your paint again directly onto, my hands are filthy by this point, onto your tile, and you're going to create little puddles of colour. Like so. Mix them up, dot them around. And just build up your composition. Such a simple one, this one, but really effective. Bit psychedelic. And you'll find that the puddles will eventually start to run into each other. That's what we want, don't panic. likewise, don't panic if you do a drip where you don't want a drip. Once you've filled the majority of your big gaps, that's when you can go in with your white and just drizzle it into the other gaps. Till you sort of filled the tile with paint. Like so. And just give it slight tilt, so nothing, we're not mixing it all up, we're just wanting to get it to the edges and over. Like so. Then we can have some fun with it. So, looks pretty as it is. Let's add a bit more interest. This is where you can go in if you've got a cocktail stick or anything a bit pointy and just create some nice marbling effects. Just to bring all your puddles together. Lovely libels. So just where you think it might need a bit of interest. If you're doing this with the kids, let them get creative. If there's other things they can think of doing with it, just let them have some fun. There's no right or wrong, really. And so, just till you're at a point where you think, yeah, that looks interesting enough, I like that. It is possible to tinker with it too much. I quite like that one. And yeah, there you go, puddle pour. So this next one is one of my most popular techniques. It always gets some really amazing results. If anyone hadn't heard of acrylic pouring, usually the first video they see that they associate with it is the strainer technique. In the video that's gone viral, it's on a larger scale. It's a really big sort of colander type strainer, obviously on a larger canvas, but we mimic the effect with these tiny little plug hole strainers that you can get. I think these are from Tesco's, like £1 for 4 in that random section. But yeah, if you've got anything like this, just usually that you put in the sink to catch any sort of food bits and things, we're going to use that. So we want to fill up our cup of paint. So if you, again, have got any residue in there, just empty it out and give it a wipe. And then we're not after cells for this. It's similar to the tree ring pour where we just want the lines to kind of create themselves. So just go in and fill up in any order you like with your paints. Until you've got a full cup. to the top. And put that to one side for a minute. Now to get this one working, we need to bring in some white on its own just to kind of help the paint to move. So first of all, center your strainer in the middle of the tile and give it a good base coat of the white. And then likewise, draw around the edges so that when the paint comes out, it's going to hit this white and it's just going to help it to move a bit more. Like so. Then, as with the tree ring pour, we're going to want to pour consistently into the middle of the strainer with a tiny little shuffle and just, yeah, watch what happens. Black and green look lovely. And it creates this gorgeous, almost like feathers. Once you get to the end, look at the cup. And away. Give it a second just for that paint to come out of the strainer before we lift it off. You can pick it up if it's easier, but yeah, it just looks gorgeous like peacock feathers. And you see how that white has just helped it stretch out. You don't want to do too much tilting with this because you really will lose those lovely shapes. So you're almost sort of letting it do its own thing. So simple, it's so effective. So by the time you finish stretching it out over your tile, most of the paint should have now come out of the strainer, so we can lift that up and away. You want to be very careful, it'll be quite sort of suckered on and away. And you'll see it creates a lot of bubbles. The bigger ones, you can just go in and pop with your cocktail stick. You want to avoid using the heat gun again on this because you'll lose the lovely patterns we've got, and you'll find that just loads of cells will spring up and ruin it. But how cool is that? Definitely one of my favourite techniques, and I've been very much meaning since I started acrylic pouring to do the bigger version with a bigger strainer on a canvas. One day. Got lots of time on my hands at the minute, so who knows. Yeah, beautiful. That's your strainer technique. Okay guys, time for another technique. This one is one of my favourites and works really well if you're working on a bigger substrate, so a bigger canvas, where obviously doing a flip cup or a tree ring would be a bit much. This is called a negative space pour. And what it basically is, you'll have a busy section of an acrylic pour running through it, and then you're going to have blocks of just block colour, single colour. So I tend to do it with white because it looks really effective as my negative space, or you can use black, or if you've got a lot of one colour or just a preference for one colour, you can do your negative space with that. But it's the busyness of the pour into the block colour, the contrast between that is just really quite effective. And yeah, on a large scale you can build up some really nice sort of compositions with a lot of movement in them. So for this one on this size, you'll need your flip cup, but you're only going to need it just over half full. You don't want to fill it up completely, because if we pour that on, it's going to then push any negative space we've got over the edges, and it'll just look like your acrylic pour again, your flip cup pour. So start with your cup. We do want cells, so I'm going to put some white in the bottom, and then go in and layer up your other colours. black. And that should be enough. A couple of drops of silicone in the top. As I said, we are after some cells. And then you want to cut that silicone through and out. Okay, so when it comes to sort of composing your negative space, working on this size, there's only so many options that are effective. So I tend to do going across the diagonal as one, or you can do the top half your pour, bottom half negative space. Entirely up to you. So there's no right or wrong, but I'm going to do it across the diagonal. And for that, you want to flip the cup over into the middle. And then before you lift that up, you're going to go on now and put your negative space on. So I'm going to use white, and the areas I want to be negative space are obviously my corners, leaving that strip across the diagonal free to fill with my pour. So just like so. Get a good dose of paint on there. And then you can go with a stick and just cover your edges. Like so. Now if I lift that up there, it's going to create my circle, and it's obviously going to flatten itself out and push off my negative space. I don't want to do that. So what you want to do is drag it down to one end, and then you're going to release a little bit of paint, shuffling up to the other end. So like so. And then off the end. Don't leave it sitting, because as I say, it will flatten itself out naturally and push into your negative space. So you want to get tilting as soon as you can on the diagonal. So that it all levels off. Kind of looks like a whale with an eye. You can see all sorts of things in these acrylic pours. Maybe something else to play with the kids. What can you see? So I can't stress how important it is just to get it levelled off. So that bit in the middle you want levelled off with your negative space. That looks about right. And back down. So you can leave it as it is. It looks quite striking. The busyness, as I say, the busyness in the colour against that block white is really quite effective, but we can equally have some fun with it. So this is where you're going to bring in your straw if you've got one, or you can use your cocktail stick. So you can use your cocktail stick to go in and bleed some flames out into the negative space, or if you've got some puff, you can go in with your straw and create some this way. So it does take more puff than you think, but the results are pretty. Like so, and it looks like some crazy sort of underwater fish now. Quick blast of heat, just in case there are some cells that haven't come out yet. And there you have it. A few bigger bubbles to pop. The lovely thing you can do with these as well, if you're at home, and especially if you're doing it with kids, is to bring in some glitter. Never enough glitter, never enough opportunities for glitter. So yeah, and you can just, I tend to pick out one colour and just sprinkle glitter on that one colour as opposed to chucking it on top. Although when I have done this with the kids, it tends to be more glitter than paint by the end of it. So your negative space pour, enjoy.
I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you had some fun. Hope you got some good results. Hope you've got paint on your face like me. Always the case. Yeah, just have some fun. As I said, those are some basic techniques that I'm showing you, but that's not to say that you can't just make some up. You can't just have a look around the kitchen, see what materials you've got, see what you might want to pour on, pour through, pour with. Just, yeah, have some fun. Important thing is to get that recipe right, get your mixture right, so you want your consistency nice and loose so that you can pour with it. But other than that, the world is your oyster in terms of what you pour on, or, as I say, techniques. YouTube equally has thousands probably of different techniques that you can try. These are literally just a handful that I've shown you. If there are any more that I can get a chance to do, I will put them up. But yeah, in the meantime, have some fun with it, enjoy it with the kids, embrace the mess, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. I've pretty much given everyone all my information that I do in the workshops, but please do still come on onto my workshops and support my business once I can get back up and running. Thank you and take care.